My view on that is, everyone wants to see a more exciting sport in pickleball for sure.
Right.
At the same time, the court is small and most people play doubles. At that point, it sort of becomes a dangerous sport. And then you start to wonder if the growth of the sport is going to be maintained. I think the biggest growth factor for pickleball is the accessibility of the sport for all players.
Hi, I'm Crystal Brown, and we caught up with Josh Kim, the founder of Spartus Pickleball Paddles. He just launched his brand new paddle, the Centurion, and the Ballista V2 to keep up with the fast pace of the power we're seeing on the courts. He shares how he designed these paddles in-house and what he'll be launching in the near future. Okay, now to the show. Welcome to Simply Pickleball, the podcast where we discuss all things pickleball, the fastest growing sport in America and around the world. We are interviewing the founders, industry leaders, athletes, lovers of the sport that are driving this spectacular growth. If you love pickleball as much as we do, listen in. Josh Kim, so excited to have you back on the show. You were actually our very first interview, and a lot has happened since then. But for all of the listeners that haven't yet met you, don't know much about your paddles, or maybe people that know tons about your paddles, maybe you could just start with a little bit, kind of take us back to why you started this company to begin with, and then we can quickly jump into what's happening now.
Yeah, sure. Of course, thanks for having me back on your podcast. I was really excited to be on the first one.
Yes.
And it's really exciting to see your channel growing so fast. Very, very excited to be back again. I'd love to talk about Spartus and how we started and why we started. Today we've almost been launched for about 10 months now. We launched our sales back in February of this year. And the motto of our company is maximum performance at maximum value. We started out with the original Gladius. This is way back when, if you're familiar with when the time period when CRBNs were popular, Engage MX 6.0 was popular. That's sort of around when we launched Spartus. And the original Gladius, which I have here, I think this is pretty popular in the Bay Area right now, was in the Bay Area. This one is considered a Generation 1 paddle. To get a little technical, it's basically just a unibody paddle where all the layers of the paddle go from top to bottom and it increases durability. That was sort of the tech that was popular back when I first started thinking about the company, which was around July of 2022. And then got the Gladius built out and launched for sale the 1st of February. And since then, we've launched a few more paddles, pushed the tech beyond the original Gladius. And most recently, we just launched the new Gladius, which is the Gladius Centurion. And this one is a Generation 2 paddle. And what that does, it adds foam around the perimeter. So it increases the sweet spot in power, and also it's hot pressed. So the whole paddle is put into a CNC mold, and the heat is applied to it for about 20 minutes at a very high temperature. And what that does is it increases the power of the paddle. This one we're really excited about because it's actually incredible value to the consumer.
Yeah.
It's only $90 after all the discount codes going around. So you can get this this is the same tech as the Perseus or the CRBN 1X, but it's at the same price as the Vatic Prism, which is probably one of the most popular beginner paddles or starter paddles out there right now.
Yeah, we've spoke with him as well, Daryl Wang. And I hope everyone will subscribe to this channel and also check out all the links, and we'll have the discount codes you mentioned. So we've got a lot to talk about because I want to get into all of those paddles. When you launched, what did you see was the problem in the market, and how did you come up with that first paddle?
Yeah, back then, I think the market was a little less saturated than it is now. Things have changed a lot since February. Obviously, it's great to see the sport booming, and there's players just coming in left and right. But the playing field back then, I think, left room open for people and companies that were very in tune with lowering the prices. I have a really different philosophy around pickleball paddles than a lot of the other companies and some players, especially ones who are familiar with or used to play tennis. And I come from a tennis background myself. A lot of the companies right now are sort of thinking of paddles as a premium product. And yes, technology will make things premium. However, my core belief is that pickleball paddles are still a consumable, unlike tennis rackets. Core reason behind that is tennis rackets, you replace the strings. There's a lot of tech in the strings as well, not just the frame itself. And you replace the strings, you pay for the strings and the restringing fee, and then you basically have a new racket there.
How much does that cost about?
Sure. You can get one of the high-end Wilson, 95s for $250. which is the same price as, the Perseus. And then every so often you'll restring it. Strings can cost anywhere from $10 to $50, depending on the type of string you want.
Yeah.
A lot of them come with free stringing. If you, have to pay for it, it's usually about $20. So, depending on how much you want to pay for the strings, you're basically paying, maybe $20, $30 for restringing.
Right.
Whereas for pickleball paddles, anyone who's played will tell you the grit wears off eventually. And the core also starts to compress, wear out. And once those things happen, you need to replace the entire paddle. So in my view, when you're charging, basically the same prices for pickleball paddles as these high-end tennis rackets, it's not really an apples-to-apple comparison, given that tennis rackets are not consumables.
Right.
My belief is pickleball paddles are consumables. And that's sort of the philosophy driving our company at Spartus. So back then, there was room to drive the prices down for the Generation 1 paddles because they were selling, just unibody paddles, or some of them were not even unibody paddles, for $200. And that's where the Gladius slotted in. These days, the tech has been pushed. We had a lot of we had the Generation 2 wave that happened in the 10 months since Spartus launched. So we saw the rise of like Legacy, 6-0, Vatic Pro, those companies with the hot molded paddles, which the Gladius Centurion is also. And these days, it's a lot harder for companies to come in just, to try to lower prices, because one of the things new companies probably do is that they use a broker to contact factories, and they go through Alibaba, which is why you see a lot of the paddles look exactly the same as each other, except for the branding on the face.
So can you just describe that a little bit? So I've talked about this on a couple other episodes, but just to go deep into it. So most of the paddles are being manufactured abroad in China. And then in order to find that manufacturing plant or whoever's going to manufacture them, you really need a broker, or most people use a broker, and that's someone who can make sure you can communicate with the factory. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Not exactly. So most companies go to Alibaba, and a lot of these entities on the Alibaba they don't explicitly say it, although some of them do, but they claim to be the factory or appear to be a factory directly. However, they're actually just another entity that has close relationships with one or two factories. And they already have catalogs of paddles. They'll show you the catalog, and I can provide a few examples. And you'll see a lot of the familiar paddles on those catalogs, and they just say, hey, what's your brand? We'll slap the logo on and manufacture this for you. I would say 95% plus of all the brands out there use this method. The other method is what we do, which is we have direct relationships with our factories. We went there physically and sampled many of the factories until we settled on a few. We do all of our engineering and design work in-house. We don't let the factory do engineering for us at all. And then basically the relationship that Spartus has with our factory partners is basically what Apple has with Foxconn, which is Apple does all of the engineering and design work, and Foxconn merely puts it together for them. And that's only done for cost reasons, for obvious reasons. If we built them out in the States, the production costs would be way higher, and we're trying to sell these at an affordable cost to the consumer. So
you basically cut out that middleman and take the responsibility for the engineering. And how did you know then what to do? How did you figure out exactly how you wanted to engineer them or tell the factory specifically what to do? I mean, that's really, like I said, kind of cutting out the middleman and all of this going direct to the factory. That's great to know that you're doing that.
Yeah. Myself and another member of the team both have engineering backgrounds. I had a biomedical engineering background, which combines almost every engineering discipline together. And after college, I was a lawyer in IP law. So very familiar with a lot of R&D practices in material sciences, because I spent many years in that field. With that said, a lot of the stuff being built around pickleball paddles isn't the highest tech possible. We're still working with material science. There was a baseline level of, experience I had, at least in, tangential fields that helped me build out our foundation around our engineering process. And we just built upon that. Once we got, good solid foundation on our engineering process, we've been iterating on them, sending them out to local pros, play testing them, and then eventually getting production models out. For example, the Ballista, which is the model that we launched a couple months ago. This one, we had 20 iterations
How's that one here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So this one, again, the factory didn't touch the engineering of this. We did all of it. We had the custom molds built out for almost every iteration. Again, it was iteration 20 that we actually put into production.
Wow.
So that was a very long process. Also filed for 2 patents on it, which are pending, which also cover some of the new paddle ideas that we have coming up as well.
What did you learn between the first one and the Ballista, and then maybe the Ballista and your Centurion? What have you learned so far about what the market wants and what the paddles provide?
Yeah, so the Ballista is really tuned for the players who like to engage in like hands battles. It's one of the fastest paddles in the market. At 16 millimeters, it is the fastest thermoform paddle right now. There's no paddle that's faster than this at that thickness. When we play tested this, the play testers all had that play style. They love to rush the net. They love to put the ball away at the net. They speed it up really quickly. The points are actually quite fast for them. I think the masses tend to not play in that play style. I think when you look at most 2.0, even up to 3.5 players, many of them like to stick around the baseline longer. So power is definitely a bigger component to their game. Power generation is not a strong suit, I think. So that's sort of where the Gladius Centurion comes into play. It packs much more punch than the Ballista. The reason we launched the Gladius Centurion first before any of the other pedals in the pipeline was precisely because of that learning we found. That the Ballista, while it's popular, I think this play style is for sort of the more advanced players.
Like the big firefights, getting up at the kitchen line and just powering it out.
Right. Like one of our local pros, Oliver Seifert, he loves to play that way. You'll see him put away points really quickly at the net, and he's not hanging around the baseline that often.
Right.
And then the Gladius Centurion, this one, at least locally in the Bay Area, every recreational player that's put their hands on it so far loved it. They're just punching it from the baseline, love the power. And obviously the cost is unbeatable right now.
So yeah, can you describe that paddle a little bit better? I know it's relatively new, so I haven't played with it yet.
Yeah, I'll be happy to send you guys a unit for you guys.
We are total paddle collectors. We like trying them all out.
You have a lot, yeah. Yeah, so this one, the play profile has a lot more power in the shots. It bounces off, it pops off the face way quicker. Similar spin, 1900 plus RPMs. There's a slight hit on this control and also the swing rate. So Ballista has a 110 swing rate. It's really, really maneuverable. It feels effortless to sort of move it at the net. However, on the Gladius Centurion, it is really fast for an elongated paddle. It's 5.5 inch handle length. One of the fastest paddles of this size and shape. It is a tad bit slower than the Ballista, but it's still very, very maneuverable and just has more power. Different play styles, there's different paddles to suit your play style.
Right. And it's still thermoformed, and then you're saying it has foam injected edges. And you said the Ballista doesn't have the edge guard that the Centurion does, correct?
Right. And we compensate for that by putting the foam and lead tape along the perimeter.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think most people are playing with lead tape, which we can get into as well. But so you're saying that what you found from the first generation, the tech's evolving. Where do you see the tech continuing to evolve? Because I've talked about this on a couple of the episodes, or at least some of the paddle manufacturers feel like there's room to keep improving the paddle. And I'm curious what you've learned so far about what people want and what different materials, again, you have a background in that. Just curious what you're learning.
Yeah. I actually had a really interesting conversation with a guy named Max DePhillips. Some of the viewers may be familiar with that name. He's pretty popular in the Pickleball Studio Discord. Mm-hmm. And he brought up something pretty interesting, at least in my view. And his comment was that this year in 2023, most of the companies converged on thermoforming, Gen 2. Everyone converged on that. Now that became a standard, every company, in his view, for 2024 is going to start to figure out ways to differentiate themselves again. And I think he made a pretty valid comment. I don't know if that's how it's going to play. I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. We certainly tried and are continuing to try something new with the Ballista. We have a few more paddles in the pipeline. One of the things I do think is going to be a move is lowering the swing rate. I think a lot of the companies have picked up on the idea that players want more maneuverability. while maintaining power and control. So faster and quicker paddles. So there's a few ways to get that done. We're seeing, even like 6-0 come out with their Infinity as, a faster paddle than their flagship double black diamond. The gearboxes, the new ones,
right.
They're also way faster than the normal Gen 2 paddles and so forth. So
do you think that's because the game is changing and that you have, younger people coming into the game, tennis players coming into the game, and that the paddles that were needed for, the game before that, so when maybe there were more octogenarians playing, or, now it's more youthful, and that means that the paddles need to keep up with the ability that's out there now?
And that's a really good point, because that's probably 90% of the reason, to be frank. A lot of the comments you get from pros is that the balls are faster, like the Durafast, and some of the new balls coming out are faster than the Franklin X Sub 40. So even from a ball perspective, the balls do travel faster. You can definitely imagine that the younger player base put much more pace on the balls. And then you got paddles that, you don't know if they're going to, remain legal, like the gearbox, which packs so much punch. So there are comments coming up left and right about needing quicker paddles because it's just too hard to get to the ball fast enough or move the paddle to the ball fast enough,
right?
With these shots coming up. So the meta has changed without a doubt. Will it stay? We don't know. That's up to the USAP to decide. But
it's a good point. Actually, it came up on the courts last night that someone said, do you think the gearbox is going to stay legal? Is it constructed differently and differently than you plan to do? Like, what's making it questionable?
The construction of it is different from every other company, and that's because Gearbox has at least 2 patents around the core technology. I can't say for certain where that tech came from. It's been a while since I read Raphael's patents, but I do believe when I did read them, the application was for skateboards, and they were translated over to paddle sports. I may be wrong on this. My memory might be failing me, but that's what I remember.
I don't expect you to be an expert, but I'm just more curious about, that what is it about that paddle that's questionable in terms of like, is it what it's doing? How fast the ball is going? Is that kind of what they're concerned about?
Yeah, from everything I've heard about their new paddles, the balls are traveling way faster than most other paddles. There was a huge, I wouldn't say controversy, but several months ago during the summer, there were foam paddles coming out. If you remember, like the Diadem Vice, and those are packing punches like crazy. And the gearboxes apparently are, delivering similar speeds as that. And my view on that is, everyone wants to see a more exciting sport in pickleball for sure.
Right.
At the same time, the court is small and it's meant to play. Most people play doubles. At that point, it sort of becomes a dangerous sport. And then you start to wonder if the growth of the sport is going to be maintained. I think the biggest growth factor for pickleball is the accessibility of the sport for all players.
Yes.
And, I do think that the USA Pickleball has a incentive to keep that structure in place, at least for the growth of the sport. Once you start getting into like the super powerful speeds, I think that sort of sets up the game to become more like a tennis sport where it's like singles dominated. So, that's just my personal view. I'm not a pro, but yeah.
Well, I know. I think it's a really interesting subject, and I think it's just come up a lot, with the paddles around speed and about power. And, if you're at the kitchen line and you're playing a really fast game, right, like, there's going to be people that are going to say that game's too aggressive for me. And we hope that the sport grows so that everyone feels it's like accessible. But on the other hand, if there's a bunch of, young 20-somethings that want to battle it out at each other, they're going to want a paddle that can do that. And clearly that's the direction.
I would be very surprised to see, 20-year-olds who want to battle it out at like 75 miles an hour at the net. That's, any tennis player,
Right.
No, you don't see that even in tennis. So, fast speeds make things explosive for sure. I don't think anyone will want to be at the net once the ball, passes that threshold.
Right. So, okay. So back to your paddles though. So what are you thinking about? There's a whole transition going on. You've got tons more young people. You have a lot of tennis players coming into the sport. How are you designing these next paddles and thinking about like, again, the market is competitive, although I would say the pie is growing anyway. So there's still room for a lot of players in the space. But how are you thinking about your next iterations?
Yeah, honestly, to be frank, the paddles so far have been more geared towards the younger player base than the octogenarians, to be frank. Although we do have a lot of the octogenarians as customers, and they always send the sweetest messages, to be frank.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. Well, so, that was sort of the baseline. I guess, I sort of built paddles that I would use. But the thing is, for one of the new paddles that we're coming out with, we do want to lower the swing rate even further. And that's going to help with the tennis elbow or pickleball elbow for a lot of the players who suffer from that. Although that's not one of the focal points, that's going to be one of the secondary effects of what we're doing. So it'll be, a paddle that's, sort of meant for players from 20 to 80, 90, whatever. Yeah, I think we focus more on, the play style rather than how old you are, to be frank.
Of course.
Because I've been, when I go to Lewis Sutter during the daytime, everyone there is sort of retired, 60 plus, and they consistently hand it to me. So I don't think, being 60 makes you a poor player. And in fact, some of them are way better than I am.
Hey, pickleballers, Crystal Brown here from Simply Pickleball, the ultimate channel for everything pickleball. If you're passionate about the fastest growing sport in America, you're in the right place. We have been fortunate enough to sit down with some incredible personalities in the pickleball world. From pro players sharing their climb to winning gold, to the founders and industry leaders shaping the game. We're bringing you the inside scoop about what makes pickleball the incredible phenomenon it is today. But here's the thing, we need your support to keep the pickleball party going strong. Subscribing to our channel not only helps keep you in the loop with the latest news, tips, and highlights, but it also helps us to continue to produce amazing content just for you. I think there's also an element of patience, right? That if you can be patient, you can probably win the shot.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. You got people like me that just wants to put away points and they just keep sending it back to you and then you make a mistake.
So you're a player yourself and you're getting busier. How tough is it out there from a marketing perspective? Like, what are you spending time on? How are you getting your paddles known? Obviously, we're in the Bay Area together and there's a lot of players here, but it's blowing up everywhere. New York City's building tons of courts. So just curious, like, where are you spending your time from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, just to be transparent, that's the field I think we're not the strongest at. It's always been a personal thing I needed to work on myself, anyways. My focus is usually on operations and product. That's just where I naturally incline towards. So our marketing traditionally has mostly been done through organic throughout the course of our business. Our customers just keep pushing it out for us. That's great. Recently, we've had more YouTube reviewers throwing out reviews of our paddles, and then we've been testing out performance marketing. So, there's been sales channels, new sales channels that we've been testing out and have been growing our sales. We're working on building out the marketing team, to be frank, because that's just something I personally shouldn't be working on.
No, you're the innovator.
Yeah. So, that's something we're working on. When you look at a lot of other companies that are good at marketing, they have really nice, visually clean, social media posts and things like that. So, we want to get there. TBD.
You're an entrepreneur and starting, but you're selling a lot and, you're busy. Are you guys feeling like, you're shipping it out yourselves, right? You guys are still sending out the product.
Right. We are actually going to start selling on Amazon soon too, with the Centurion. So hopefully sometime in December it'll start, but TBD, maybe by latest January.
That's great. So when do you plan to have your next paddle out? When do you think that'll happen?
Probably a couple months right now. We have 2 front runners for the next paddle. We don't know which one we'll let out first. But the good news is we'll have another one that follow quickly after that. We're just seeing the market at the moment and seeing which one we think is a better fit for the market or to release first. Yeah. But I can tell you they're really different, not in shape, but in terms of play style from the current paddles we have in our lineup right now. And as we get closer to launching, we'll definitely share some more information on them. One of them is public, is that we've been working on a raw carbon fiber version of the Ballista. One of the things that we're doing as well is to lower the swing rate even further, and while dialing up the power.
Gotcha.
A lot of the players again want to see more power, especially in thermoform paddles. The Gladius or the Ballista is thermoformed, but we purposely dialed down the power because we wanted to have a paddle more oriented for the net for players to generate power themselves. But the new Ballista will sort of dial up the power with a lower swing rate.
So are you saying that it's raw carbon fiber? That's not how the current Ballista is?
Yeah, it has 3 layers of carbon fiber, but the final layer is a granule paint and epoxy resin layer that we paint on top of the carbon fiber.
Gotcha. And so the new one will have just the raw carbon fiber will be the top layer.
That's right.
Interesting. So where do you think, what about pros? Do you sponsor pros? Do you think that's a good method for getting the word out there? What have you experienced so far?
Sure. We do sponsor local folk, and the reason behind that is community growth. And to be frank, from a business perspective, we don't expect returns. From a business perspective, the reason we do this is Spartus launched from San Francisco, and the community has given so much to us, and it's a personal thing to me. Yeah. And I really want to give back to the community. And one of the things I think can give back is helping out some of the up and rising talent in the community here, especially those who are really plugged in, sponsor their equipment, sponsor their tournaments, things like that. When we launched, and especially more recently, you mentioned, sort of the marketing. There's a few pickleball groups in San Francisco who have suddenly started backing Spartus. We just feel fortunate because we never, like, for example, Golden Gate Pickleball, that's a big group. We never reached out to them, but suddenly they started, pushing Spartus for us. And these are the things that we feel thankful for and want to do our part in giving back to the community and see it grow in the Bay Area. I see Spartus paddles basically every time I go out. So,
that's so great.
Yeah, here. So, I just want to, do my part in seeing what I can do back for, the players here.
Yeah. Well, where do you think the sport's headed? Like, there's been a lot of controversy with MLP. Do you think it's a sport people want to watch on, I don't know when you say watch on TV, I don't even know what that means anymore. If they want to stream it, if they want to watch it live, want to watch it on YouTube, but they want to watch the pros playing. Are you still feeling the pulse of just incredible energy around the growth, or do you think it's kind of flattening out?
I think the pulse is still growing, but that's for the player base. My hot take on this, and I've been pretty consistent, and no offense to pros, I love you all, and I personally love watching you guys play. I don't necessarily think pickleball is a spectator sport. I always thought it's a sport that people love to play themselves, but it's not necessarily one, especially a casual viewer, that wants to watch. And there's a few reasons. I mentioned this, I think, the last time we met on your podcast, is a lot of the sports that become spectator sports, and there's a lot of money behind, are very explosive sports. You see Formula One, soccer, or American football, basketball. When you see LeBron James dunking, it's a really explosive move. You can't do it. It's just a feat of athleticism that you can only watch on TV, or even better in person. Right. And unfortunately,
for a lot of money.
Right, for a lot of money. That's right. And there's been a lot of money being injected, relatively speaking, for the pro scene, especially with the rise of MLP. But even with that money being injected, I'm not sure it really translates into viewability. More views per se. And I am curious to see what that growth rate has been. Has it been the hockey stick growth that was anticipated or hoped for, or has it flattened out and it's more a logarithmic curve now, which I think it is. Everyone has so much time to watch something, whether it be a Netflix show or sports. And my friends, even my personal friends who play a lot of pickleball, don't watch pickleball themselves. So, I'm not quite convinced on this pickleball becoming a spectator, like a mass spectator sport, but you need to appreciate the efforts being made and the fact that it's still being streamed, because there are passionate players who want to learn from watching the pros, and there is still value to be obtained from streaming the pro scene. I mean, I think I saw you at Oracle Park, when we watched NLD Waters play. It's unbelievable, their skill.
Totally. They make it seem so easy. And I think you're right. I mean, it's a question. I don't know if it's going to be like tennis where there's, some big match every year, like Wimbledon, where people will want to come and it'll become a big event, or will MLP style take off? The players are young. A lot of them are young. Not all of them, actually. It's an interesting age gap, but at some point, there's going to be new players, and even the new technology that you guys are talking about. I think you're kind of at the heart of it, right? As the technology improves and the wealth of knowledge is shared, these players might be far different and far better than what we see right now, right? Like we give them the right paddle and give them a lot more training and some money, and I don't know if I don't know if it's going to look like LeBron dunking or not, but it might be pretty amazing to watch.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, we'll see how it grows.
But I know it's growing in terms of, how many people want to play, and that means the market's kind of wide open for you. So what do you hope? You're an entrepreneur. You've been an entrepreneur for a long time. You're in San Francisco, where pretty much everybody has entrepreneurial ideas all the time. And what do you hope for Spartus? What do you, maybe in the short term and longer term?
Sure. I mean, the overall goal is to continue to grow. We've had big growth this year since we launched, and we want to keep up that pace and accelerate that. Everyone has dreams of their company becoming huge. So that's not exclusive to me. We're going to certainly try our best to see how far we can get. But again, the overall goal is to, like I said before, is to deliver maximum performance at maximum value.
Yeah.
And that's going to definitely come at a cost to us, because we don't want to sell these paddles at the same price as a lot of the companies that price them super high when they're not delivering the same,
right,
or some kind of crazy performance. The delta is zero, to be frank. So yeah, it's definitely to grow. Also, one of the things I want to keep seeing is the sport grow, not only for personal and business reasons, but also I do think it's extremely healthy for the community. When I think about even my own parents who are now in their mid 60s, it hurts to see that they can't be as active as they were, when I was growing up. My dad used to play tennis with me every single day for hours. It's something I really valued. And, you see them at mid 60s, and a lot less mobile, but they can go to the pickleball courts and, stay active, get their steps in, make sure that their cardiovascular system is still, taken care of. And you see that, that's why I love to play with the older folk when I go out during the daytime, because when I see them, I know a lot of people like to make, jokes about, pickleball is an old sport, but, what I see is that it's really increasing the health of everybody.
Yes.
It's one of those sports that makes people want to go outside.
Yes.
And makes people want to move around. It's how many times have you seen this in our lifespans? I don't think I can think of a single time where you see this kind of phenomenon.
I feel like it's going from, it's like there's so many more ways to sit on the couch and do nothing, right? There's a million programs you could watch. There's a million video games you can play. There's books on, you can listen to a book. There's so many reasons to not move. And this is and be isolated, right? So you can sit on your couch by yourself and do nothing, or you can go out to the pickleball court. And I think I agree. And people stay for hours, like time passes and they're like, I got to get home. I haven't eaten in 4 hours or something. So I do think that, not that that's necessarily healthy, but it is healthy that they're sort of away from screens, around other people. And I can't say that enough. And I would love to travel around and see this in other areas. The places that I have traveled, immediately, it's exactly the same. I went to New York. I went down to Southern California. I went to Hawaii. I was like, wow, this feels exactly the same no matter where I go. Like everyone's excited to play, and all different ages and stages. So I think you're right. And I think to be able to play something with your parents, I think I've mentioned this on an episode. I would never play a sport against like a 27-year-old 6 foot, whatever guy in shape. There's no sport I would think I could play against him. I just wouldn't want to do it. I'd be like, that's all right. Maybe swimming, because maybe they don't know how to swim. But I feel like at the pickleball courts, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter if you can speak English. Like, people just start the game and they're ready to go.
Right. Yeah. And I love seeing you on the challenger court. I love to see things like, everyone, playing competitively. It's so great to see that.
Yeah, I agree. So, well, that's good. So, so you said that, before we end, you said you have big visions. What are there other products you want to come out with? Like, maybe you're designing other products besides paddles, and what are the other things that sort of need to be from a business stance? What other things need to be brought to the market?
Yeah. So we do have other stuff, in the pipeline, equipment, bags. There's 2 bag models that we have samples of built out. Right now, we're just distributing them to our sponsored athletes, and some of the bigger ambassadors for us. Apparel, this one's been in the works for months. Designing apparel is a lot harder than you think it is, especially, to get the placement correct and the materials correct.
Yes.
Like, people don't want to play in 100% cotton, even though that's what they prefer wearing, like, on a casual basis. Right. Sort of like the sweat resistant material, things like that. So we do have apparel. I think I mentioned last time we've been giving them out for free until we hit one that we think we could put on them, on sale on our website.
Yeah.
So those are upcoming. I do have to say that they do take a backseat to paddles. That's that's the core of our business right now.
Yeah.
So once you see less movement there, we'll put a little more emphasis on sort of the auxiliary items and products. But for now, most of the focus is on paddles.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting. Like I said, there's a lot of change happening with paddles, and people need to replace their paddles pretty often. So that market just should keep improving. And you can find those on your website. What's your website? It's I'll put it on the show notes and everything, but I want to make sure
Yeah, sure. It's GoSpartus.com.
GoSpartus.com. Well, Josh, I have to tell you, like, I love your paddles. It's super exciting. Again, we're local, so I get to see it firsthand and I get to see you. But for those people that are around the country, I think, if you could tell them why you think they should try your paddles out versus others, what would you say to them? Like, why would they pick Spartus over others? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but just
sure. I don't actually feel pressure, so thanks for the question. I want to make a push for the newest paddle we have, which is a Gladius Centurion. We just released this. It's the red one here. And we talked about this a little during this podcast so far, but I think this is the best value you can get for your dollar in the market today. If you're thinking about, the dollar to value ratio, this has the highest. You get all the power you need. You get tons of spin, massive control. And this is only $90 when you use Simply Pickleball's discount code.
We'll put that discount code.
So, you can buy multiple of these for the same price as, CRBN 1X or a Perseus, and you get a very similar play profile, and you get it from a company that did all the R&D in-house.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we did that is we think long-term, we save costs as well, even though upfront it required more capital. So we just want to create a win-win situation for us and the customers. And we want the customers to win massively, and not only for their dollar, but also on the courts. So check out the Gladius Centurion. It's only $90 to you, and it's massive value.
Yes, awesome. I can't wait to try it out. But that's a good push for that. And honestly, I think part of the reason we have had more listeners, and hopefully we'll continue to have more listeners, and everyone will subscribe, is that getting some personal information on the who's making the paddles and how you construct them and how did you design them and how are you manufacturing, because it is confusing. There's very few forums to really understand the difference between the paddles. But I think when consumers start to understand materials, the swing rate, you brought up the issue of pickleball elbow or tennis elbow. And what I learned about that was that some of that has to do with how hard someone's trying to move the paddle, and that puts strain on their arm. Whereas if the paddle has a good swing rate, it can relieve that. So you don't have to try that hard. You don't have to swing that hard to get incredible power. So I think you're tackling all the right subjects with all your paddles.
Yeah, certainly hope so.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you. Hopefully you get back to the courts. I wish you all the luck, and keep us posted. Everybody subscribe so they can hear when Josh comes out with his next paddles. I'm really excited to try the newest one, the Centurion. So thanks, Josh.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Simply Pickleball. We will be back very soon with great interviews, discussions, and more, all about pickleball. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or any of your favorite podcasting outlets. Until next time, happy dinking.